Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. We still have 3 weeks until Donald Trump is sworn into his second term. There's no denying that with some genuine political canniness, Trump has cobbled together an unwieldy and in many respects somewhat unlikely political coalition. And that coalition delivered him the first outright popular vote victory for a Republican since George W. Bush in 2004. It's only the second time it has happened since the end of the Cold War. Now Trump has to actually govern. And that is typically when all the internal contradictions in any political coalition rise to the surface. We're not even to inauguration yet, and that factional fighting, I would argue, is bigger and more glaring than almost any other I've ever witnessed in American politics. You're seeing that right now in the battle over immigration, which has been exploding among the MAGA right. Basically, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, the tech overlords who appear to be running Trump's second-term agenda, rely on highly skilled immigrants to power their enterprises. Those immigrants come to this country to work with an H-1B visa, which provides terms that are extremely favorable to their employers and also an amazing opportunity for the folks coming to work here. Folks basically have to stay at their job in order to stay in the country. If they leave their position, they have 2 months to find a new job or risk getting deported. So you can see why someone like Elon Musk likes them so much. For example, this is not abstract. When Musk bought Twitter, and a huge percentage of the staff headed for the exits, Vice News reported on how Twitter employees on visas can't just quit. And the other side of the debate over the H-1B visa is the one that folks like Stephen Miller and Stephen Bannon have been pushing for years, that we should restrict, limit, perhaps end all immigration in the U.S., legal and illegal, right? Stuff at the border around asylum, but also H-1B visas. I mean, just listen to the two of them on Bannon's old radio show back in March of 2016. This is before Trump was even the Republican nominee. Take a listen.
And they see these oligarchs down there with 54 private jets, and they're not down there for their health. They're called together by Karl Rove, and it's a Stop Trump movement. And it's a Stop Trump movement because they want unlimited HB1 visas. Isn't the beating heart of this problem right now, the real beating heart of it, of what we got to get sorted here, is not illegal immigration, as horrific as that is, and it's horrific. Don't we have a problem? We've looked the other way on this legal immigration that's kind of overwhelmed the country.
The history of America is that an immigration on period is followed by an immigration off period.
So see, be very clear there, right? H-1B visas, legal immigration, and immigration off period. Like, they have a pretty clear vision. Miller's going to be the one writing that border bill. So those two factions of the Republican Party with pretty profoundly different views are at each other's throats about what to do with their newfound power. Should they use the legal immigration system to continue supplying Silicon Valley and other industries with highly skilled workers? Or should they apply some new racist immigrant exclusion act, like the Chinese Exclusion Act, to deport all those workers and let Americans take their jobs? In defense of the former argument, that is continuing H-1B visas, Elon Musk spent his Christmas week absolutely melting down the social media platform he owns. He has since deleted many of those posts, including one that replied approvingly to a post calling American-born workers in general a slur, the R word, for being too stupid to be able to do the jobs that workers on H-1B visas were doing. One emblematic post is still up, where Musk tells opponents of H-1B visas to F themselves before pledging to go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. Although he seems to have underestimated how much the MAGA diehards hate immigration, his online base of right-wing Twitter trolls quickly turned on him, spurned on by the likes of Bannon, as well as Laura Loomer, the fringe far-right activist who spent much of the fall cozying up to Trump before his campaign stepped in and pushed her aside.
This is not a civil war because they're not tough enough. They're just not.
I don't think that it's acceptable for George Soros, Elon Musk, or Peter Thiel. It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle a billionaire is on. I don't think that it's acceptable for billionaires to have this much power and this much access. On the policy dispute here, and there is a real one, Trump actually took Musk's side on it, coming out in support of H-1B visas in comments to the New York Post. Quote, "I have many H-1B visas on my properties. I've been a believer in H-1B. I've used it many times. It's a great program." Now, I have to say, I think Trump might be confused here. I don't think his properties are hiring a ton of, say, like software engineers off H-1B. As the New York Times reports, Trump has been a frequent and longtime user of the similarly named but starkly different H-2B visa program, which is for unskilled workers like gardeners and housekeepers. Of course, you could drive yourself crazy trying to track Trump's position on anything at any given moment.
in 2016. Of course, he called for, guess what? The H-1B to be banned.
Nobody knows the system better than me. I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me. I know the H-1B very well, and it's something that I frankly use, and I shouldn't be allowed to use. We shouldn't have it. Very, very bad for workers.
Regardless, it was nice of Trump to back his co-president Elon Musk this time. Not that it helped much, as Musk seems to have backed down. He now calls our legal immigration system broken. And in one sense, you know, there's a bunch of weirdos online fighting with each other. You know, it's a day ending in Y. But these people, I mean, the guy who's about to be president, the world's richest man, they're about to be in power. They're going to be making decisions. If this fight was any indication, this fractured coalition is not going to make governing that easy for them when they get in power. McKay Copton is a staff writer for The Atlantic and author of Romney, A Reckoning. Charlie Dent is a former Republican congressman of Pennsylvania. And they join me now. McKay, I thought of you because about a month ago, you and I had a conversation on my podcast, Why Is This Happening? The main theme of which was, yes, this coalition was successful politically. Yes, they won and they will control the House and the Senate and the presidency. But there are deep internal, real, genuine factions and fights and tensions ideologically. And it was interesting that immigration was the first one we've sort of seen kind of blow up.
It's especially interesting because immigration has been kind of like the defining issue of the Trump era in a lot of ways, right? And in some ways, what's happening now is only the latest flare-up in a pretty old fight in the Republican coalition. You can take any presidential election of the 21st century and find this divide between Chamber of Commerce Republicans and the Wall Street editorial board on one side, Wall Street Journal editorial board, and on the other side, kind of conservative talk radio, Fox News, and the right-wing base on the other. Every Republican presidential candidate in the last 25 years has tried to straddle this line. You remember Mitt Romney in 2012? He talked about self-deportation. That was kind of his red meat to the base. He also talked about stapling a green card on every college diploma of an immigrant who came to the U.S., right? And so what's interesting is that Trump, made immigration one of his key wedges in 2016 in the Republican primaries. He was seen as this extremely populist figure. But I don't think we should be that surprised that he has now found himself siding with what is essentially the Chamber of Commerce position on immigration.
Big shocker.
Well, here's the thing. I talked to a Republican elected official just a couple weeks ago who said, and the thing about Trump that people always fail to understand is that the most consistent metric he uses to judge people is their net worth, right? It's how much money they have. And so we should not be shocked that Elon Musk has been allowed in the henhouse. It's not because of his, searing political charisma. It's because he's incredibly wealthy. There's a reason that Trump often defers to his golf buddies and high dollar donors and allies in Silicon Valley and Wall Street. He cares what those people think of him. So I think that helps, that should help inform how this kind of battle is going to play out.
And it's also why Bannon is sort of so angry about this. It's somewhat performative. And Charlie, look, I've covered this issue for 20 years. You're a veteran of these exact fights where there really is this tension that McKay highlighted. What I think is interesting to me, this new factor, which is Musk, brings this totally different set of ideological commitments and also material commitments into this universe that weren't there even 6 months ago. Now it's like everything has to be about, well, there's the Trump position, there's the base, and then there's, what does Elon Musk think? And I've never seen anything like it where there's just this new, it's like a new planet came in, and now everything has to orbit around that as well.